Welcome into another edition of the Playoff Roundtable. I am Michael Gallagher, sports reporter for the Nashville Post. I'm joined today by two of my favorite people to share a press box with. We have Jeremy K. Gower of AP Radio, and we have the busiest person in Tennessee, Teresa Walker for the Associated Press. She's literally covering every playoff team that is in the state. She's probably, like she was saying, she just ended up waking up and she's really tired. So we're going to try and keep this short, but Teresa, we appreciate you joining us.
My pleasure.
So last night, obviously, every time you cover a playoff game in Bridgestone Arena, it's fairly entertaining. The atmosphere is always just something to behold. But back-to-back double overtime playoff games, it almost seems fitting that it would happen because the Predators. It just seems like, I don't know the exact number on the stats here, but it just seems like every time they play a playoff series, one of their home games goes to overtime. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on games 3 and 4. Obviously, it's a tie game. It's a tie series now, 2-2. But yeah, just kind of get your guys' thoughts on games 3 and 4 because the Predators came in down 2-0, and it almost seemed like Carolina was stealing one game away at home from putting the series away.
Well, absolutely. I mean, let's face it, the way that the Predators played in game 1, now game 2, 1-0 going into that final minute, that was a game there that they started playing. Aside from the production on the power play, they started playing a little bit like the team that we saw over the final 28 games of the regular season. I don't know about you two, but that's why I said a week ago on local radio, that I could see the Predators winning in 6, which would be Thursday night now. But I didn't see that team show up in game 1. Partly in game 2, but it really felt like they started showing up in game 3, and honestly not until kind of later in that game. But something about the overtime, Saros, man, he tied the franchise record in game 3 with shots that he stopped. And then the performance that he came through with yesterday, I'll credit Adam Vingan. He tweeted that, for those of us who've had questions about Saros, whether he could be the number one, that he's kind of answered those in these 2 games. I completely agree. I mean, 110 shots saved in these 2 games. I mean, in that overtime section yesterday, in overtime 1 and 2, he was batting pucks away. He just seemed to be seeing the puck so very well. And that's the team that I was expecting. They were hitting, they were skating with them. They weren't backing down from the Canes. And that was the biggest thing. The first game and a half into almost game 3, you could see the gap between the division champs and the Predators, who had bulked up and gotten into the postseason by beating Chicago, Detroit, Columbus. And we hadn't really seen them stand up to the top teams in this division. And now I think it's a new series.
I could not agree more in the sense that it is a new series. I tweeted last night, actually, when Colorado won their series against St. Louis in 4 games, that one series had ended and another has just begun. Because I do feel like now the teams are even, in a sense, right? Like, is Carolina the better team? Yeah. I mean, the Preds can win this series in 4 straight at this point, go win the game 6, and I'd still believe Carolina is the better team. If you're putting them up, 9 times out of 10, they'd win 8 times out of 10 or whatever. But Teresa's right in the sense that this is the team that I expected to see coming into the series, because this is the team that has kind of been, since March 14th, had kind of been got a snowball rolling downhill, and I thought they'd come into Carolina and at least, I had Carolina in 6, and I technically still do, but I think that this was the team that I expected to see, in the sense that it would make it more of a competitive series. Just like Teresa, I agree. The first 2 games, I did not see that. That being said, what were the scores in those 2 games, you guys? In the first game, it was tied going into the 3rd. In the second game, it was 1-0 Carolina going into the final minute. So despite the eye test, which is this Preds team seems off, or they seem intimidated, or they seem whatever, they were still in the game in both games, game 1 and 2, until late. And then, of course, in game 3, they're tied going into double overtime. Game 4, tied going into double overtime. My point is that this has been it's been a closer series than we were giving it credit for in the first 2 games. And when I say we, I don't mean the 3 of us. I mean media, and fans and stuff. But also, I'd like to say that I tweeted this as well. It seems like in last game at least. Game 3, there were obviously moments of this, and they played well enough to win, obviously. But yesterday, especially, the Predators they were finishing checks. They were setting the tone of the play. They were setting the pace. They had a transition game, something that we've not seen for a while. And they were being proactive and not reactive to Carolina in the sense that it's almost like they believe. Now, of course, they're going to tell you they believe because they're pro athletes and they're going to go out there and they have confidence in their team and all that. But what I mean is there's another level of belief. And when you are playing Carolina and their high-powered offense and their potent team and they don't really have any weaknesses except for maybe in goal, which definitely was not the case yesterday. Nedeljkovic was amazing. You've got a Predators team who kind of should be good on paper, but really is kind of, they had to take that, they had to sit on that heater to even get in, that kind of thing. Whereas Carolina's been like, no, we competed for the President's Trophy, we're good. Right? It's two totally different levels. And the Preds played like that in the first 2 games of the series. But in games 3 and 4, especially yesterday in game 4, it was more even. It was more like, no, we're going to take it to you, and we're going to command our presence on this ice, even if we lose doing it. And that's what you want to see. You want to see a team going out and trying to impose its will despite getting kicked in the teeth. And I think that's what we saw from the Predators in game 4.
Yeah, to Gover's point, I don't think you get very much pushback from a lot of people that would say Carolina is the better team in the series. But like you said, game 1, they were tied going into the third period. Game 2, they were only down a goal, I think, until the last 2 or 3 minutes of that game. They obviously win games 3 and 4. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility for Nashville to be up 3-1 or maybe have even clinched this series. They've played above and beyond what I think a lot of people gave them credit for. So my question to you is how much credit does John Hines deserve for having this team in this position at this point? Because this is a guy who, middle of the season, fans were, you could audibly hear, there was only 2,000 fans in Bridgestone Arena, but you could hear about half of them calling for him to get fired. So how much credit should John Hines get, given that the cards were just stacked against him the entire season, and he is coaching this team and they're giving the Hurricanes a run for their money?
In the middle of February, I was on vacation in Florida, and February 15th, I sat down and took time out to prepare John Hines' fired story by a pool in Florida, because yes, it was so dire that even though David Poile had, it was incredibly rare when he fired Peter Laviolette the year before, but things were so dire, it just felt like that might be the move he had to make. You had Todd Richards on the staff. That would be an easy kind of promotion, maybe shake things up. So I think he deserves a massive amount of credit. I mean, they've used 35 players this season. And even yesterday, Tanner Genoa's out of the lineup and Olivier's in, and we've been questioning some of the roster moves that he's been making. He takes off, the power play's not producing, and he takes Johansson and Duchesne off of that unit. And look they've gotten goals the last 2 games. I mean, it's kind of stunning. Yes, the production could still be better, but they were getting nothing, and now they've gotten a goal. So, and maybe that helps push Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchesne, who, those 2 players have really come to play. They've been productive, and they've gotten on the score sheet these last 2 games. So, those are moves that I think you have to give credit to John Hines. And so some of his post game, the question, his answer after game 2, still maybe not handled the best way, because I completely understood the question, and I didn't see the game, but I still understood the question because I was covering the Grizzlies in Memphis. But other than that, he seems to be pushing, if not all of the bright buttons, most of them.
Yeah, this is a hard one for me because I have not been silent about my thoughts on Coach Hines and whether he was the right guy and whether it was a mistake and all that stuff to hire him, and the fact that he should have been fired at some point during the regular season. But I walked that back, if you will, come in April because hold on one second. Sorry, because school's out, everybody. So I walked that back in April in early May, because I wanted to give him credit. I pride myself, if you've known me for any length of time, I pride myself on being fair and being balanced, being equal, not having homer glasses on of any kind, not being able to say, okay, great random tangent. Great example, Corey Perry. Don't like the player, hate the player, wish he would go away, right? I don't understand why he has Teflon on him, never gets in too much trouble to the degree that I think he should because of his reputation. He goes and knees John Tavares in the head in the Toronto series. I don't think it was on purpose. That tells you right there that I try to think of things fairly. So in this particular case, I tried to give John Hines credit, and I wanted to give him credit because of the job he had done. He turned this team around. But I think you do have to get a lot of the credit to the players. The players at any given point could have been like, look, this season's over. Let's just not get hurt, get back to our families. How many new dads are on this team? I mean, they easily could have been like, let's just get back to our families and let's just kind of spend that first year with them or whatever. And they didn't. They came together somehow, and they got themselves into the playoffs against all odds, it seems like. And now that they're in the playoffs, again, those first 2 games were more like the first month and a half of the season, right? They were like, okay, well, they're kind of there, but they're not really putting in a full 60 minutes, and they're not finishing checks, and they're kind of just taking what the opponent is giving them, not in a good way. And in games 3 and 4, we saw the opposite of that. So I think Coach Hines does deserve quite a bit of credit, but I do think that you need to credit UC Saros, of course, and the players for coming together and saying, we need to do this all as a unit and not have 1 or 2 superstars stand out and carry us all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's a mixture of the coaching that Hines has done, and it's a buy-in from the players. We listen to David Poyle on the radio all the time say that he still believed this team was a playoff team, and we all kind of collectively rolled our eyes and we're like, okay, David, you're clearly smoking the good stuff there. And they somehow figured out a way to do it. I like Teresa, I was planning my John Hines eulogy, as you will, and going through some research and compiling some stats and all this stuff, preparing for the inevitability of him getting fired. And here they are. I said after the first game that he got outcoached by Rod Brindamore. I still maintain that he did. But in games 2, 3, and 4, he like Teresa said, he really has pushed all the right buttons, and he has the Predators in a spot that I don't think anyone besides anyone in that locker room would have thought that they would be in right now with the series tied 2-2. And I think one of the buttons that he's been pushing, which really goes back to last season, is kind of keeping UC Saros in that starter role. I know it's so hard with the emotion into it and how much Pecorino means to this fan base for him to not be the starting goaltender in the playoffs. But UC Saros is on another planet right now. And goaltending has really been the story of this series, not just for the Predators, but for the Hurricanes too. So I want to get your guys' take on that. Last night, Alex Nedeljkovic was out of his mind, and the Predators still found a way to get through. So my question is, how much longer? I know we talked about this in the last roundtable, and Gower, you said if Saros can give them 920, 930 save percentage, they should be good. He's currently at 929. How much longer do we think Saros can keep this up? Can he keep it up long enough for them to steal a series? And what does it do for the confidence of the Predators knowing that they got their best shot from Nedeljkovic last night and they were still able to beat him? Jeremy,
Let me just start real quick and just say that I'll challenge something you just said, which is steal a series. UC Saros has been obviously lights out. He's been amazing. Okay, but
yeah, I guess we got to stop using that phrase now because they're not stealing anything. They're clearly winning.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So if this team plays like they did in games, definitely at times in Game 3, but definitely in Game 4, if they play like that, then they will have earned the win. They won't necessarily have stole a series, other than the fact that it's an upset, and the people will say that obviously is just a turn of phrase. But I think in other words, in Game 2, and this kind of goes back to what Teresa said earlier about Joe Rexroth's question that got fumbled by Coach Hines, is Saros played well enough in Game 2 to play well enough in Game 2 to steal that game for the Predators, and it didn't happen. I would offer you the same against Nedeljkovic yesterday. Nedeljkovic played well enough to steal that game for Carolina, even though you probably wouldn't say that because Carolina had the majority of shots and all that. But Nedeljkovic was out of his brain amazing on like 4 or 5 plays that I could name. One a 2-on-0, and he shut the door on that. And it wasn't a flubbed shot or anything like that. It had height. I mean, it was just a great stop. So there was plenty of examples yesterday where Nedeljkovic stole that game, played well enough to steal that game for Carolina, and didn't. And we always say in sports, things kind of even out. They tend to even out a little bit more. If you won a game you didn't deserve to win, or or vice versa, you deserve to win and lost 2 in a row or whatever, and it kind of evens out over the course of a season. I think we just saw that with games 2 and 4 in this particular series regarding the goaltenders.
And I'll say this: I had somebody text me after the game last night. They said, "Do you think Pekka gets a start on Tuesday night, just because of the fact that Saros has played so much?" And I say no. One, he's not skating that far, and then secondly, he is in that groove right now. He is playing. The way he was seeing the puck. I mean, as good as Nigel, I can't say that name. I'm trying, but the other goalie. But Saros, I mean, he's just batting away pucks. I think his confidence is growing by the stop, and he has that spot. He's earned that net, and it's his to hold right now. So I stick with him, and I just think we see a goalie blossoming before our eyes, and who knows how long it goes. But we have seen too many instances of goalies being able to do this, not just for a game or two or a series, but to get teams deep into a postseason. So we might be seeing the start of that with the Predators. And, again, the way they played down the stretch, their wins were right up there in the top handful of the NHL. This is, they keep this up, then absolutely they can go as far as they want to. And I do want to circle around. Jeremy is absolutely right with the players, because this is where you can see how much guys want to keep playing. When you're into a second overtime in back-to-back games, and they're still skating, they're still checking, they're still, trying to get that goal. So that everything is coming together for this team, and that's what makes it so much fun to watch.
Let me real quick just say that I forgot to say this earlier. I made a note and forgot. It is back-to-back games, like Teresa just said, but we all have to remember, including myself, it wasn't two playoff games and two double overtime games in 48 hours. It was two double overtime games in 42 hours. Remember, because it was an early start for Game 4, so it was not it wasn't like Saturday, Sunday, but it was Friday night and then Sunday afternoon. So it's more impressive that the players go out and take care of business in two 90-plus minute games. That is unreal.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 192 minutes of hockey. They've already played 5 games in a 4-game span. Sorry, Chris.
Sorry, Michael. And here's the thing, and you're right, they're not back to back. I mean, the Oilers Jets, they had that. Yeah. The Jets had that incredible comeback last night to win their game. They could, and now they play a true back to back. They're playing tonight and could sweep out McDavid and Draisaitl and just end that series. So the Predators, yes, they have to travel today. But guess what? Hurricanes have to travel. This is where we'll see which team is best able to recover. And, because the lactic acid buildup on those muscles have got to be massive.
Yeah, kind of transitioning in, we've kind of touched on a little bit, talking about the players buy-in and how it just shows they want to keep playing. We've seen so many different players step up. I know we all kind of questioned John Hines after Game 1 with the lineup decisions, but putting Nick Cousins in there, putting Ellie Tolvanen in there, bouncing kind of Jeannot and Olivier, kind of rotating them around too. And we saw it last night. Luke Cunnin is someone, since he's come back from his injury, David Poile said, he sat him down and had a conversation with him and said, look, this is our new team identity. You either fit yourself to play this or you don't play at all. And he took that to heart. And you've kind of seen in the last 21 regular season games, I think he had 14 points and 7 or 8 goals or something like that. Ryan Johansson's kind of stepped up to become the playoff player we expect from him. Matt Duchene with the overtime goal in Game 3. There's just so many players that I feel like are stepping up and kind of getting that well-rounded kind of contribution. And we talked about it in the last playoff roundtable that Carolina's depth scoring was going to be hard to stop. And we talked about how they're just loaded with Trocheck and Sebastian Aho and Natchez, and they just have so many players. We're starting to see the Predators' depth kind of come alive now. Do you guys feel like I don't want to say like kind of struck gold here, but do you feel like they have the players to kind of compete with Carolina's depth scoring and kind of make this, kind of like games 3 and 4, it's going down to the wire, and even Game 2? Do you feel like the Predators finally have those players that are stepping up and they can kind of compete with Carolina's depth scoring?
I completely believe that they do. I mean, look at Cousins. He didn't play in games 1 and 2. And then when he's out there, he's doing things to make contributions. Cunnin, I mean, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but they didn't have, there was some criticism. Oh, they don't have a guy who just blew them away and far and away the scoring leader, right? But they have depth. They have all these guys who scored at least 10 goals. So, that means that anybody can come through. And when you're in the postseason, there's a reason why Brock McGinn is so beloved in Carolina, because, he's a guy coming off of, his line and coming through with timely goals. And that's what the Predators have had. So, 35 players played this year. Guys are used to, if you're on the ice, go try and score. It's your opportunity. Take it and run with it. And we've seen them do that. So that's why I completely think that, and again, there is still a Forsberg, Johansson, Duchesne, Yossi. So, the Predators have their stars too. It's just that they do have plenty of depth scoring.
Yeah, the scoring for Nashville it's hard to make this argument because Nashville has 9 players with 10 goals or more, and Carolina has 10 as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, 8 with the 10 goals or more. And obviously they're front loaded with Aho having 24, Niederreiter having 20, Trocheck having 17, Stahl having 16, Svechnikov having 15. And then all of a sudden you get to the Predators' range of Granlund and Yarkrook leading the team with 13. So, but I will argue, though, that Nashville does have scoring from everywhere when they're all rolling, when they're all going. And that obviously that's a big if. I mean, the offense dries up. I mean, you can't, there's no the guy. I probably would have put Philip Forsberg in that category, but he has not necessarily shown that this season of being the guy they can lean on as he has in the previous seasons for whatever reason. And so, but yeah, Carolina, they can come from anywhere, but Nashville can also come from anywhere. And I think they're 2 evenly matched clubs, and really think about it. Again, other than your top echelon of all world players, I put Aho in that category, of course. Niederreiter's having a great season. I've always loved Vincent Trocheck since he got drafted. I've always loved him a lot. We saw him in the rookie prospects tournament that they had at Fordyce a few years back, and he was a man among boys out there. So, yeah, I mean, they've got some players, no question. Svechnikov is obviously very talented, but I do think the Predators have a very well-balanced lineup. I will circle back, though, to the Olivier and Jeannot thing. We were questioning that on Twitter, why is Olivier in and Jeannot is not? Well, Jeannot has done really nothing to deserve being taken out of the lineup. Now, we don't know if it's injury related or, whatever, so maybe it is. But we were questioning that, and it seemed to be the right card. I mean, Olivier played a great game yesterday. Didn't get on the score sheet, but he had a couple of strong drives to the net, almost assisted on a goal. I mean, he played well. He played his role. And other than that penalty right off the gate, he played disciplined hockey as well. So the Predators really are a balanced team when they're all going. It's a dangerous gamble, but when they are all going, they can play against anybody.
And let's not forget, Saros has an assist in the series. So, they're finding ways to adapt to try to beat. And part of that was trying to beat the way the Canes are stacking up on the blue line. So when you're getting an assist from your goalie, that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Kind of wrapping this up here, the final question I wanted to talk about. I know, Jeremy, you were Canes in 6, as was I. But it's like you said last night, the series has just begun. It's a new series now. It's a best of 3. Nashville does have 1 more game at home. Carolina obviously has 2. But the Predators, I think, outside of the home ice advantage, the way they played, they were just a better team than they were in games. Not even really game 2. They played really well in game 2. Game 1 was really the only game that was kind of a letdown for them. But given that it's a new series, given how the Predators played last night, they didn't prove they can go out and hang with one of the best teams in the NHL. They proved they can go out and beat one of the best teams in the NHL in back-to-back games. Did games 3 and 4 kind of shift your perception of this? Do you still feel like Carolina is going to win? And if so, how do you kind of see the next 2 or 3 games playing out?
Well, I'll say this. I said Predators in 6 a week ago, so I have to stick with that. And here's the thing. I do think the Predators can pull this out, because now tomorrow night is going to be massive. The momentum that either team gets. And while the Predators were completely outshot on the scoreboard yesterday, they seem to have, and I haven't checked the final stats, but they had the bigger high danger chances. They were getting, when they shot, their shots were the kind that can pay off really quickly. There's one, we've seen the Predators have those games where they're just shooting away, piling up the shots on the board, and they're not really threatening the net as much. So the fact that they are, finding ways to get the puck on net and try to get it in, that to me, And just because it'll make my life worse, because now that the Memphis Grizzlies have a win in Utah, and in the NBA, one winner wins the series 76% of the time, I do think the Predators are going to win, if only to make me keep working and working very hard. I'll just say that.
It's a good problem to have, I would think. So there's a lot of things to unpack here, right? The first thing is the psychological part, which I'm a big believer in. If the Carolina Hurricanes win tomorrow, if they win Game 5, the Predators have a ton of pressure on them, obviously, to win 2 in a row. Now, they can't win 2 in a row. You can only win one game. That's where the cliche comes from. You can only take one game at a time because you can't go out and win 2 games in one night. But, which is baseball doubleheader. But the Predators win, the pressure is tremendous on Carolina because, yeah, they've got to win 2 games. It's the exact same philosophy. But they are supposed to roll in this series. So now all of a sudden, yes, they wouldn't have home ice advantage anymore. That's number one. But number two is they have all the pressure of, like, we competed for the President's Trophy. We're the best team in this amazing division with Tampa and Florida as well. And we are 60 minutes away from going home, right? In a season that we thought we'd go the distance, or at least had a chance to go the distance. That's what they're thinking. So the psychological games are totally different because Predators aren't even supposed to be here, really. And then if they win it, it's, I mean, just massive for them. But if Carolina wins it, the pressure's on Nashville. Of course, they don't want to go home, but at least they're coming back to Nashville, right? And then they're going to use their crowd again, hopefully. Not saying that was the difference, but it obviously helped. And then at that point, if you win Game 6, it's just you win one game, right? It's anybody's game at that point, Game 7. So I love that part of the game, of sports, actually. But I do think that Nashville needs the victory more in the Game 5 victory. Can Saros step up and steal, and I will use it for this game, steal Game 5? Can the team prove that it's not just a home ice thing? That they're going to go out there, they're going to use the energy from the amazing crowd that was, it was basically sold out, right? Yeah, yesterday, right? So can they use that not at home? Can they go out and play that way when they're not at home, with their backs not up against the wall, right? All those things. Can they play that way normally, basically? And so if they can do those things, yeah, I think they can come away with a victory, and I think we've got some amazing stories to write. But at the same time, I would not be surprised if Carolina goes back home, blows them out 6-0, and then, the series is kind of theirs. So, but that's the crazy thing about sports and about this series, right? Is that I can see all the different possibilities. I can see Nashville going in there and eking out a victory, and all of a sudden coming back to Nashville up 3-2. I can see this series repeating the exact same way the Stanley Cup Final went. They played well in Pittsburgh in Game 1. They did not play well in Game 2, although Pontus Aberg had that sweet goal in Game 2. And then they came down 0-2. They tied the series. Next thing you know, the Predators fans believe that they can win a cup, right? And then they dropped the next 2, unfortunately. So that could all happen again. But all I'm going to focus on myself as somebody who covers this team is just the next game, because I don't want to get too ahead of myself, because I do find myself kind of going and say, okay, well, if they win this game, they can kind of get there. Who are they going to play? Are they going to play Tampa? It's Carolina is the focus because they're too good. If you give them an opportunity, they will smoke you and put you in your place. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying, Gallagher, I still believe Carolina in 6, but I would also not be surprised if Nashville won in 6 at this point. They're playing that well the last 2 games.
And just real quick, Nashville better be ready, because Carolina, after the game yesterday, it was all, I can't wait to get back in front of our crowd. They know that they're going to have those people are going to have their back, and they're looking forward to that. It's going to be a wave. That first period is going to be a rush, and they're going to have to handle that first 20 minutes to stay in this series.
Yeah, I think you both make great points. And to that last point, Teresa, Nashville has, over the course of the season, notoriously been slow starters. So if Carolina comes out, they have that crowd going the way that they want it to. It's almost a perfect storm of, it could be 2-0, 3-0 before Nashville even blinks, because that's kind of the pitfall they've been in this season of getting off to slow starts. And you just kind of, to your point, Jeremy, they really need, if ever they're going to steal, quote unquote, steal a game, it's going to be Game 5, because it's almost expected Carolina wins Game 5, Nashville wins Game 6, and this thing's on a collision course for game 7. I do think games 3 and 4 did change my mind a little bit on the Predator side. I do believe it'll be close. I initially had Hurricanes in 6. I'm going to change it to Hurricanes in 7 just based off of how the series has gone. But I also would not be surprised if Nashville steals a game and ends up winning the series as well. It's kind of one of those things. This is why we love playoff hockey, right? There's no other postseason, I think, in all professional sports that are like it. So we definitely have a lot to look forward to on Tuesday, Friday, and potentially over the weekend as well. Just want to thank you both for doing this. You can find them on Twitter, Gower at Gowertime, Teresa at Teresa M. Walker. Make sure you go read all of her stuff on the Associated Press. Jeremy's doing some stuff with AP Radio. They're both in the press box for the home games as well, unless Teresa's in Memphis, of course. I really appreciate you taking time to do this, guys, and we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gallagher.